Many years ago in the faraway village of Edmon, there lived a man named Oku. This man was a phenomenon in a way that the people of Edmon had never seen before. When his mother was pregnant with him, she never rested. Her waist was always on fire, and on the day of her delivery she went to hell and came back. It was these circumstances that made his father name him Oku, meaning fire. Oku grew up very quickly, but unlike other boys of his age, he was always in the bush. He would spend hours there picking leaves and talking to the trees. Oku was just strange, and so it did not come as a surprise to people when he became a Dibia. Oku became a well-known native doctor in Edmon, and people from far and wide would come to seek help from him. After hearing about his powers, he could do and undo in whatever way you wanted. If you wanted him to do charms for good purposes, he would oblige you, and if you wanted them for evil purposes, he would gladly do so too. Due to his reputation, Oku was feared by all in the village, and no sensible parent wanted their daughter to be married to him. As such, Oku stayed unmarried for very long. He focused on his Dibia business and became very wealthy. When he was 50 years old, however, he started to see the need for a family. But since no woman would marry him, he decided to have it his way. Oku was on his way back from the bush where he had gone to perform some ritual for a client, when he saw a young lady gathering firewood in the bush. The moment Oku's eyes fell on her, he immediately became attracted, and without thinking twice, he pulled out his staff and stretched it forth towards her. Immediately, the lady turned and followed him. This lady's name was Nikru, and Oku took her home and made her his wife. He sent some gift items and money to Nikru's parents as payment for her bride price, and they had no choice but to accept it because no one dared challenge Oku. Oku now had a wife, and he took very good care of her. They were living fine together until months later when Oku brought in another lady he had charmed also. This lady's name was Ugo, and Oku married her just the same way he married Nikru. Nikru was pregnant at this time, and months later she gave birth to a baby girl. One day, a man ran into Oku's compound crying for help. "Disperdia Oku, please help me. My son is dying. Please do something. I don't want him to die. He's my only son." Oku came out and saw the man crying like someone in distress. "Why are you shouting in my compound? Don't you know this is a secret place? You don't desecrate it with noise." The man immediately fell to his knees. "Please, Disperdia. I am very sorry. I just need your help. My only son. He went to sleep last night, and this morning everyone woke up, but he did not come out. We then went to check him, only to see him struggling with his life. He could not stand or talk. I rushed down here immediately to see you because I know you can help me." Oku looked at him pitifully. "You people will anger the gods and then run seeking help when the consequences strike. Wait here for me. I am coming," Oku said to the man, and before the man could even respond, Oku disappeared. The man was gripped with fear and turned around looking for Oku. It did not take up to 2 minutes before Oku appeared back to meet the man. "Everything is settled now. Your son is healthy." The man was shocked but surprised. "Oh Dibia, thank you so much." But Oku stopped him. "I don't need your thanks. My fee is 20 bags of cocoa." The man froze in shock. 20 bags? Where do I get that from? I don't have up to that. Please be merciful. I can only afford 2 bags. Oku looked at him ridiculously. "After bringing your son from the hands of death, you are offering me peanuts? Who told you that Oku is a poor man? I want my payment in 7 days. If not, you will use your daughter in exchange." The man was shocked even more, but Oku gave him no chance to complain as he left him and went in. The man went back home with mixed feelings because even though he was happy that his son was healed, he knew that he had lost his daughter. Where on earth would he see 20 bags of cocoa to pay Oku? Oku was the worst person to ever owe, and what would have even led him to Oku if not because of his son's life? Now he was in Oku's trap and no one could rescue him. 1 week later, Oku had a new wife because the man could not pay his debt. The young girl's name was Ulochi, and she became Oku's third wife as a repayment for her father's debt. By now Oku's 2 older wives had already given birth to 2 children each, and his once lonely and quiet compound became busy with children shouting and running around. Everything seemed perfect, but they did not know that their wars were about to begin. Oku was a very powerful and unfortunately evil Dibia. His heart was evil, and he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Apart from doing charms for people and healing them, Oku was the one who usually prepared the charm for the most dangerous masquerade in the village. But this was a secret no one knew about in the village except for Obina, the man who comes to meet Oku privately for the masquerade charms. This masquerade was so powerful that it only moves in the night. It was a taboo for it to be seen in the daytime. One night Oku went out to get some herbs in the bush for some charms he wanted to make. He had gotten them and was on his way back home when he unexpectedly met the most feared masquerade parading in the night. Oku pretended to not have seen it and continued moving, but the masquerade attacked him. The masquerade went close to him and used the palm frond in his hand to wipe Oku from behind. Oku felt a force in his body and angrily turned back. Who did that thing? The masquerade started to dance their mystic dance, ignoring Oku's question. It was the man who accompanied the masquerade that replied, "Oku, how dare you walk in the eye of the gods and still have the guts to question the gods? No mortal does that and lives to tell the story." Oku looked at him ridiculously and asked, "So that is why he wiped me the palm frond. Do you know who I am and the consequences of what you two have done?" The man laughed and sneered at Oku. "You are a nobody. You think your small charms can save you? You won't leave here alive today for your arrogance." Oku became very angry and didn't have any more time to waste ranting with them, so he cursed them. "Since you have no fear or remorse, you remain here dancing the dance of the gods until I ask you to stop." He had not even finished talking when both the man and the masquerade started to dance seriously. They thought it was a thing of play, but they were about to perform a concert shutdown that would shake the whole village. Oku returned home safely that night and slept as if nothing happened. As for the man and the masquerade, they continued dancing all through the hours of the night into the morning. It was the men who were going to check their traps very early in the morning that saw them and ran back in fear to report what they had seen. It was a taboo for the masquerade and escorts to be seen during the day, so everyone tried to avoid them and avoided the paths where they were dancing. The news soon got to Obina that the masquerade was still out in the day dancing, and he was shocked. He rushed over to the spot where they were at and saw them dancing energetically, unable to stop. They were sweating terribly by now and even crying, but still couldn't stop. Obina asked the escort, "Why are you still here? Can't you stop dancing?" The escort continued dancing and answered, "Obina Dibia, please help us. We are under a spell, we can't stop dancing." Obina was even more shocked and confused now. "Spell? Did you encounter anyone who did this to you?" The escort then told them that it was Oku. As soon as Obina heard Oku, he shouted in fear, "You met Oku? Of all the people to meet, it was Oku you decided to meet? You must have stepped on his toes for him to do this to you. Do you know who that man is? He's the spirit behind this masquerade. Your own is finished though, because no one can undo what Oku has done. I can only go to beg him, but it is not guaranteed if he would forgive you." Obina then went to Oku's house to intercede on their behalf. "Temper justice with mercy. Who doesn't know you in this village? Those boys are fools. Have mercy, please." But Oku looked at him with disdain. "Look at the kind of boys you gave my charms to. Boys that couldn't even handle a little power. They think such power is for terrorizing the public. They would dance to the tune of the music they played." Obina stepped in. "Yes, they would dance to it. But please, they have danced enough. You know they are not meant to be out in the daylight. Please release them." Oku then warned the man, "They have beaten the forbidden hand, and unfortunately you can't save them because you won't be able to get the items needed for the sacrifice in 12 hours. In exactly 12 hours those men would join their ancestors. But if you feel like you want to try, then go ahead. Get me the molar of an elephant, 4 strands of hair from a lion, and the spit of a cobra. Get this before 12 midnight today, and they will be free." Obina's jaw dropped in terror because he knew that those boys are finished already. He dared not argue further with Oku and just quietly left Oku's compound. There was no need going back to meet the boys. He would just arrange for some fortified youths to go and carry their corpses by midnight because it was certain they would not see the next daylight. At midnight, Obina arranged the youths who had already dug graves, and when they carried the masquerade and his escort, they buried them immediately. Such news was not to be known by the public, and that was how it was swept under the carpet. Oku soon fell sick, but it was not your regular kind of sickness. This sickness kept Oku bedridden for days, and his wives thought he wouldn't make it, but they were shocked to see him 3 days later looking even younger and stronger. They did not understand the logic behind it, but they were happy for his recovery. Unfortunately, Oku's recovery came at a huge sacrifice because that same night Nikiru, the first wife, lost her first son. The boy had not been sick, neither did he complain of anything, he just died like that the next morning. Oku's compound was filled with cries and wailing. Nikiru was uncontrollable and her co-wives were in shock about what happened, but none of them suspected Oku at all for anything. Oku too was moody and seemed to be mourning his first son. The season soon passed and life returned to normal in the compound, but that was just the beginning because there would be uncountable deaths in the compound. Oku soon felt sick again, and this time around after he became healthy it was Ugo's son that died. This time around the coincidence was too obvious. Ugo and Nikiru started to cast suspicious glances on Oku, but they dared not confront him. They knew they were powerless before him, but they also hoped that their suspicions were not true and that Oku was not the one eating his own flesh. By this time Nikiru and Ugo had already given birth to several sons and daughters, while Ulochi, the third wife, was unable to have a child. She was not bothered anyway because she did not want to have a child for the wicked man who forcefully took her away from her family. So while the other women were bothered about saving the lives of their children, Ulochi had nothing to bother about. For years, Oku had not taken interest in any other woman, and they thought that was it. They wouldn't have to deal with any other woman. But one day he came home with a very young lady. Oku had a very close friend named Okafor, who was also a powerful dibia in the neighboring village. Okafor had a daughter named Adaku, whom he loved dearly, but unknown to Okafor, whenever Oku comes to visit him, his eyes were always on Adaku, and then when he proposed love to Adaku, surprisingly she agreed. Adaku had always wanted to be with a man who was as powerful as her father. She did not like those fragile, vulnerable men who could be easily blown off by the wind. And so when Oku expressed love to her, even though he was older than her with several decades, she accepted to marry him. They both started a secret affair hidden from her father. It was not until she became pregnant that Okafor realized what had been happening under his nose. He was furious with Oku, but when Adaku pleaded with him that Oku was her choice, he had no other option than to accept and give his blessings. And that was how Oku brought the already pregnant Adaku into his house as his wife. The other wives were in shock when they saw Adaku, but what they did not know was that Adaku was trouble. She was arrogant, fearless, and troublesome. She had the backing of her father, so she had confidence that nothing could go wrong with her. It was obvious also to all that Adaku was the favorite and beloved of Oku, so they all avoided her like a plague. One day Ulochi, the third wife, who was barren, went to the stream to fetch water. She stored the water in her drum and went in only for her to come out later to see Adaku taking her water. "Adaku, what are you doing with my water? You can't just use my water without my permission." Adaku turned to her and sneered. "If I use it, what will you do? Is this not all you are? Or did you keep any part of you inside? You should be happy that Adaku is even using your water. Who knows, I might be merciful to you and help you out with your barrenness. You know, it still baffles me how in a compound filled with children and obvious fruitfulness only you would be barren. You have more important things to think about than ordinary water." Adaku blurted out bluntly and continued taking the water. Ulochi stood there speechless and humiliated. The words Adaku told her sank deep and pierced her heart. She had been unbothered about the issue before, but now that it was brought up to her face, she needed to consider it. Why was she the only one who couldn't have a child among them all, even when her husband was a powerful dibia? Anyway, she was not going to go beyond her limits. She would take whatever she saw like that. Adaku continued to exercise her authority in the compound, and the other wives feared her. She finally gave birth to a baby boy, and unlike the others, Oku killed a full cow to welcome Adaku's son. Adaku also went on to have many children for Oku, and she was not afraid of what was eating the children of the other wives because she knew just how to handle the termites causing the damage. Oku continued to fall ill, and whenever he got well again, one of his children would die. It continued this way for years until Nikiru and Ugo could no longer take it. Nikiru was left with only one son by now, while Ugo had a son and a daughter left. They could not bear to watch their remaining children die just like the rest because it was obvious that the beast eating the other children was still around waiting to eat the remaining ones. Nikiru and Ugo then made plans and gathered some money and properties, waiting patiently for when Oku would travel as usual. As soon as they got the opportunity, they ran away very far from the village. But they first went to another dibia to seek solution to the deaths. And when the dibia revealed to them that their husband was using the blood of their children to increase his lifespan, they were shocked to their marrow. "Please help us. What do? We don't want to lose our remaining children." The dibia then told them that the only solution was to use the blood against him. He has been able to use them because they have the same blood. So if you make an incision on them, collect a little amount out of their blood and return it to the earth, he won't be able to gain access to them again. The women were relieved and did as they were told. However, they did not return to Oku's compound for fear of what he would do to them, so they ran very far from Edom. When Oku returned, he realized that his first two wives had run away with their remaining children, and he was angry. But his anger did not last for long because he couldn't deny the fact that they had been of great help to him for years. He would forgive them for the sake of the children that had been useful to him. He also had several options apart from the fact that Adaku had given him many children. He had also impregnated several women outside, so he could easily use any of these children at any time. Ulochi was his special fat cow. He had collected her womb and kept it for reserve pending when the need would arise. But Adaku was wiser than he thought. She already knew that it was Oku who was eating his own flesh, and so she was very active. Whenever Oku fell sick, she would pack all her children and go to her father's place. Okafor would then perform some sacrifices to fortify his grandchildren from Oku's claws. Adaku would only return home when she was sure that Oku was healed. Oku couldn't do anything to Adaku because of her father, and he also loved her. While all these things were going on, no one in the village could do or say anything. They dared not interfere, and after all, it was not their business, neither was it their children that were being sacrificed. Oku was unchallenged and unstoppable. He had sworn that he would never die. He was going to beat death and win. Several years passed, and Oku remained stronger and healthier until one day when he was struck down by a power that was bent on picking him away. By now, Adaku's children were all grown and no longer living in the compound. He was bedridden for weeks, and the whole village was so sure that he would die. His 2 wives also were eagerly waiting to announce his death. Oku was in a very fierce battle with the spirit of death sent to take him. This time his spirit had left his body and was floating for days. But Oku would not be Oku if he didn't succeed with a good bargain. This was the unforeseen circumstances he had reserved his special sacrifice for. This time he offered Ulochi's womb up, but not only that, he solidified it with her blood. It came as a shock to everyone when exactly 14 days later, Oku stood up and was walking about firmly as if he had not just been at the verge of death. Adaku knew who her husband was and was on the lookout for who he had sacrificed. She was sure he must have offered a huge sacrifice this time around to save his head. Her suspicion was confirmed when that same night, Ulochi went to bed and never saw the next daylight. Adaku flew into a rage and went to confront Oku. "Don't you want to die, Oku? You want to immortalize yourself? You have finally decided to kill that woman after tying her womb for years? You are evil. You have eaten all your children and chased all your wives away. Who will you eat next, eh? It is only you and I in this compound. So who will you eat next? Let me tell you, my bone will choke you. You will never eat me. I will stay here with you. I won't die before you. I will be here and see all the evil you are doing and how you will reap everything with your head. You can't eat me, oh Oku. That thing you know, I also know it. You will die before me." Oku was very furious at Adaku. She was the only one who had the audacity to challenge him in this manner and go scot-free. He himself knew that he couldn't eat her. If not, he would have offered her up since. Anyway, he would ignore her and focus on other important things. The whole village trembled in terror when they heard about the death of Ulochi and the mysterious recovery of Oku. At this point there was no hope for them, because from the look of things Oku would never die. He was stuck with them for life. At that same time some missionaries came in to aid him, and it didn't take long before they heard of Oku. They went to preach the gospel to him, but Oku warned them never to trespass. He told them that they could convert his children and grandchildren, but to never appear before him again. His first 2 wives who had escaped with their children were now old, and their children were grown and married too. Nikiru's son had gotten married and had children of his own too, but he was not comfortable living like an outcast. He was constantly on Nikiru's neck pressuring her to take him to his father, whether dead or alive. But Nikiru refused, telling him that his father was worse than the devil and would not think twice to eat him up if he got the opportunity. But the young man did not understand what his mother was saying and kept on pressuring her until she gave in. However, she only gave him the address and did not go with him. Nikiru's son went with his wife and children to look for Oku, and when Oku saw them, he knew immediately that this was his son. He welcomed them well and gave no sign that he could even hurt a fly. They stayed with Oku for a while and went back to their base. Nikiru was relieved when she saw them back in one piece and told him never to go back there. But it was obvious that there was a spirit pushing her son into his grave, because he refused to believe his mother and insisted that the father he saw didn't look like one who would hurt his blood. The next time he wanted to go visit Oku, he asked Ugo's son too to follow him, and even though that one was skeptical at first, he ended up convincing him. When they all arrived, Oku was very impressed at the large family he had away from home. He received them well, and they were all relaxed, but unknown to them, Oku was already planning his retirement plan. His eyes were on the grandchildren whose fresh young blood would give him about 5 extra years each. That was a lot to last him before he would start to think of another extension. And so before they left, Oku collected something that belonged to the grandchildren, which he would use to invoke them whenever he wanted. Nikriru and Ugo were deeply scared because they knew that Oku could not have changed, and when their sons and grandchildren came back home, they told them that they needed to go to a dibia for cleansing. But the men refused, telling their mothers to stop being paranoid. Unfortunately, it did not take long before the tragedy struck, and 2 of their children each fell sick and died before they could even look for treatment. It was then that their eyes were opened, and they then accepted to go with their mothers for cleansing and protection. They now believed that their father was an evil man and avoided him. Oku had already gotten more extra years added to him, and all those who were his age-mates had already died, including Okafor, Adaku's father, who was his good friend. But Adaku was still with him, watching him like a hawk. She had warned her children to not return home as she could not protect them again. She could only protect herself. Oku continued to cheat death and extended his life so long. He had used up everyone related to him, and the ones who were still alive were running away from him. He started to get worried because he knew that he needed to get physical contact with them before he could successfully eat them up. But now that everyone was running away from him, it was a big challenge to him. Aduku too was now avoiding him even though she was still in the same compound with him. She was waiting for when he would die because she would be the one to break the good news to the public. By the time Oku was 154 years old, he had exhausted the blood in his bank and there was no one to eat up again. He then started to degenerate. His skin started to wrinkle so bad and his bones started to shrink too. This time around, death was inevitable and it dealt with him hugely. The once powerful, rich, fearless, and immortal Oku was now reduced to a dog suffering from rabies and kwashiorkor. He was abandoned and lonely, and one morning Adaku perceived a foul smell, a sign that the great Oku of Edom had died. She was 85 years old at this time and she alerted the whole village. The news was the best they had ever heard in a very long time. Some youths who were fortified came and they went in to wrap up Oku and took him into the evil forest to bury. Such people were not to be buried in the village because they would cause famine and drought to the village, as their evil body would contaminate the earth, making the earth to be angry with the village. Oku's children also heard of his death and they were all very happy. They all returned with their children, grandchildren, and their wives, and for days the whole village was in celebration. They fixed a day for his burial ceremony and they killed 4 cows and 10 goats that day. The whole village of Edom and even neighboring villages gathered to celebrate the end of a great evil.